Howdy there, everybody. God bless, and welcome to another episode. This was all of these were supposed to be posted on Sunday. That didn't happen. Things got in the way, but they're all going to be uploaded on Monday. I mean, the first one got uploaded on Sunday. This one should be uploaded on Monday, along with the other one. Another discussion episode should be after this. But this one's going to be one of the main sermons here. Don't know how long this one's going to be. I intended the discussion ones to be shorter, and they end up being about an hour. So, who knows? Kind of depends on how this one goes. And depending on the title, you may already be upset or curious or wondering of what in the world I'm going to talk about today. What do I mean? The title that says trans kids are still God's children. Or rather, trans people are still God's children. Well, it's pretty obvious. They're His children. He made us all. That is what you believe, right? You do believe that He created us all. And if that is true, then we are all His children. We're all His creation. So why do you treat them like they're not? Again, if you don't, there's a pretty good chance that if you're listening to this, you're already on the same side, same wavelength. But if you're not, then that's who I'm talking to. If you want to listen, if you want to hear, the message is on my heart for a reason to speak it. So somebody obviously needs to hear it. So if you're afraid of them, why are you afraid of trans people? What has that community ever done to you? If nothing, and the answer is likely nothing, then why do you fear them? Why hate them? What reason do you have to hold such anger and hatred and vitriol towards these people who've done nothing to you? We're commanded by Christ to love thy neighbor, and you cannot love while hating or fearing. Fear is not of God. Are we just going to forget that scripture? I'm told that I can't pick and choose, but certainly you people can. You can pick and choose all the time just to support your hate and your fear. But fear is not of God. We are not commanded to hate. We are commanded to love. If you are hating, then you're not loving. And if you aren't loving, then you aren't following Christ or His commandments or His mission. It's that simple. If you don't believe me, read the Old Testament. It's all right there. You don't even have to do much digging to get that in there. And even if you were so strict about it, well, even a strict reading says that you have to love everybody, and you have to treat them right, and you have to literally give them the clothes off your back if they ask for it. And I doubt you're doing that. But what about the Old Testament? What about the Bible? What about the law? Well, what about it? I'm sure I could name dozens of laws that you're breaking right now. Ones that you're breaking that make you impure, unclean, and some that you should be stoned for. Furthermore, we're Christian. I'm assuming if you're listening to a Christian thing that you're Christian, but who knows? But if you are Christian, our covenant is different. Our rules are supposed to be different. We are supposed to be the evolution, the step forward. It's kind of what the whole movement started as. So why then are you falling back on the old law? Why then are you going back to that which came before when Christ already fulfilled it? Is it because there's nothing in the new covenant, the New Testament, to justify your hatred, fear, and bigotry? Could that be the reason? I mean, most of us Christians are Gentiles with no Jewish ancestry, no connection to the culture. Why then are you clinging to their laws if you're not one of their people? Why then, if not just to support your own bigotry, your own hate, your own fear? Why then are you using God to be ungodly? Which is something you're probably thinking of what I'm saying. But since you're all so keen on going back to the old Jewish law, let's try something. Instead of me going on and listing off the many, many ways in which you are probably sinful, unclean, and impure, and are going against Jewish law, all of the different things that you ignore. I'm going to do something different. I think it would be helpful to look at gender and sex and how they were viewed under Jewish law. Specifically, how it was viewed in the Talmud. So before we begin, we're going to have to clear some things up. Should be noted, or not noted, we're going to have to take a step back for a second and understand what sex and gender are. Sex and gender are two completely different things. They always have been. You can debate all that want, but there is no debate. You either didn't pay attention in school or you don't care. And if you didn't pay attention in school, then you're ignorant. And that's okay. Being ignorant's not a problem. Being willfully ignorant is the problem. So if you've never heard any of this before and you want to learn, good, learn. But if you're just shutting off your ears and turning off everything and saying, I don't want to listen, then that's not good, because then you won't learn anything that way, because you don't want to learn. That's your problem. Problem you're going to have to take up before the Lord. But going back to sex and gender, they are two different things, always have been. That's pretty easy. If they were the same thing, they would just have one word. They'd have one classification. But scientists and doctors, so on and so forth, biologists, have two sections, sex and gender. That's why your license or passport will say sex and then say male. But you won't really say a male or female for gender, though some conflate the two. And that's kind of how it's been. Sex is different than gender. Gender is how you express yourself, how you show yourself to the world, how you feel, well, kind of what you are, and how people perceive you. It's what you put on. Sex is how you're born. It goes down into your chromosomes, your DNA, so on and so forth. And that, when that is decided, it forms what sort of primary and then secondary genitals you have, or sex organs you have. Which, by the way, is why they're called sex organs and not gender organs. We all know that. And if this is weirdly making you uncomfortable, talking about genitals and all that, then I need to politely ask you to grow up. We're all adults here. And even if there are children, they learn about that in science. You allow people to dissect things in class, literally cutting open a dead being, but talking about genitals. Oh, genitals, that makes you shake. We are all human. We all have bodies. We all know what these things are. Talking about them, in a matter-of-fact manner, is okay. Always has been. Shouldn't be weird. That doesn't make it sexual. Though I understand, since the English language isn't perfect, having something called sex, and then also another word that is sex, that can be confusing. Though, there's a reason for that. It's because the act and the being, well, kind of have the same word, almost like slang. Since you're putting the two together to have sex, to make the sex. Yeah, there's a whole, we want to get into etymology of words, it's a whole weird thing. But you're not making gender. Just kind of how we do it. Yes, sex, even though it's seen as the main word, is a slang term in terms of the action, similar to making love, or many terms in the Bible where they say knowing, or made one, or came union. What was another good one? There was one that made me laugh at the time. I can't remember it. But because some people are going to be like, yeah, but you just said if they were two different things, they're two different things, they have two different words. What about these two different things that have the same word? English is imperfect, and sex, the action, is a slang. It's just been accepted as proper term for a while. But even without even getting to gender, because we're not going to touch that, sex isn't something that's one or the other. Oh, this is just weird liberal stuff or whatever. No, this is science, and it's always been science, even going back 100 years. We have known that, well, actually longer, much, much longer than that, as we're going to get in once we get to the Talmud. We have known that for quite a long time. Even just taking sex out of it, we know that people aren't made one or the other. There's 7 billion people on this planet, and every single one is different in so many different ways. Even if you look at things like skin color, not every black person looks the same. Not every black person has the same pigment or the same melanin. Some are darker, some are lighter. Even white people, some are almost translucent, and some are darker. And then you have all the different colors in between because people are different. It's just how it is. People have different eye colors. Even when they look the same, they're varying degrees and hues, so on and so forth. It's not just a set number of colors. Some people can have 2 different colored eyes, like David Bowie. It's rare, but it can happen. All because of just the weird little things that get ticked off once you're being made in your mother's womb. That's just a thing that can happen. And sometimes bad things happen. Wrong things happen. Sometimes the baby doesn't make it. Sometimes it doesn't form right. Sometimes you get deformities. We're all aware of this. So why is it so weird when you say, oh, well, it's not one or the other, and people go, that can't be true. And it's like, really? What about the guy that was born with 6 fingers? About some people that were born with parts of arms or half of organs, too many organs that aren't supposed to be there, so on and so forth. Millions of people around the world are born with differences, abnormalities, etc. This includes sex. These abnormalities are beyond male and female. What does that mean? Well, how can everything be beyond male and female? The reason we like to have 2 things, well, besides society and cultural things, going all the way back to religion, yada, 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 is because it's simple. It's easy. It's like when we talk about seeing things in black and white, but we know there's nuance. We know there's gray. We know there's not just one thing or the other. Sometimes there is, but usually it's gray. Usually it's nuanced. If you have a choice between Coke and Pepsi, does that mean there's no other sodas? Well, of course, there's all kinds of different sodas. And knockoffs and all kinds of stuff. Also, you can get a Coke in that can. That's terrible. That's bad. It went bad or something got in it, so on and so forth, because in the process of making it, something went wrong or something went abnormal. Or for whatever reason, they decided to change the formula and everybody hates it and they change back. That's a weird thing that happened. Just adding a little levity to this. But we are all different in some way, and that goes the same for sex. So yes, most people will fit pretty neatly into 2 slots. But that's not everybody. And it's never been everybody. Over 1% of the population is intersex. Let me think about that. That sounds kind of low, but it's not. It's actually a little bit more than the world's population of redheads, and I know you've probably seen or met a redhead in real life. There were several in my class when I was in school, and several more in the school's total. Natural redheads. I went to a very, very small school in a small town. There were probably a bunch of intersex people who didn't know it, because for a good portion of intersex people, they may be it and not know. So what is intersex? Well, we know that all kinds of people can be born with all kinds of either defects, deformities, abnormalities, something that makes them different. Right? Well, the same thing for sex. Intersex is the term we want to use when they don't neatly fit into either category. Now, that gets a little confusing, but it's just because we don't really have a word for that for a third type. Now you might be thinking, so there's 3 instead of 2? No, there's a lot more than just that. Intersex is a catch-all term, because again, we like to make things simple. When you think, oh, that doesn't make sense, oh, but you all have the same chromosomes, it's either XX or XY. Everybody always says that. XY means man, XX means woman. What about XXY? What about XO? Well, that's interesting. Have you ever heard of that? Well, it's something that can happen. XXY, which is Klinefelter syndrome. These people are usually socialized as male, and sometimes their stuff looks male, but then, as they grow up, certain things start to change. They may experience a different type of puberty. Other things might start to grow. Other organs might appear. Or they might have secret organs they don't know about because not everybody's getting exploratory surgery. They might have a floating ovary. They might have a uterus and not know it. It's just a uterus that has no opening. All kinds of things. They could have genitalia that's, well, not up to par, as you would say. Other issues. They might have hormonal issues that they can't figure out what's causing it, and nothing stops it. I know that one pretty well. Is I have to take shots in order for my body to have for my body to have testosterone, because for whatever reason my body stopped making it, and we're not really sure why. One of these days I'm going to see an endocrinologist. We're going to find out. But does that make me less of a man or less of a person? No. But for whatever reason, especially if people say God doesn't make mistakes, and I don't think he made the mistakes. I don't think he did this. I was just born this way, for a body that is really trying its best to fall apart. And when I was 19, it just decided, you don't get any more of this. And what was supposed to happen is the treatments were supposed to kick in and act like a jump start, and my body was going to start making its own. But that didn't happen. My body went from making very little to shutting off completely. It's probably autoimmune, but we're not sure. There's other stuff that I got to do, but wouldn't you know it, that costs money, and it's very, very expensive. It's likely that I could be intersex. I might have an XXY. I could have that extra X chromosome. I might have a floating ovary. In fact, that's been a theory of mine for a while. People act shocked when they hear that. Oh, how can you say that? Or, oh, don't say that. I'm saying, oh, it's not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if it causes me issues, but it's made me less of a person. Like what? Sometimes extra stuff is there. Because what people don't realize is when you're a baby, or when you're a fetus, not a baby yet, that stuff's being formed. Do you think it just sperm, egg, and then bam, you're fully formed? That's not how it works. You got to grow each individual part. You got to grow your head and your torso and your legs and your arms, your eyes, everything. And at the beginning, everybody kind of looks the same. And if you just kind of looked at it, you would say, that looks like a girl. Because, even if you turn out to be a boy later, or male, really, everybody would say, that looks like a female. Well, it's because the stuff hasn't grown yet. It's all still inside you being made. And sometimes that stuff doesn't grow, even when it's supposed to. You could come out and even have the correct chromosomes, XY. And then they look at you and go, no, this looks like a girl, but you don't have any of the girl parts. It's just everything is still inside you. It just hasn't come out. And it may come out later. Who knows? It's just a weird thing. There are people who are born with incomplete sets of both. Or one's more formed than the other. And then they unfortunately get either surgery because their parents do it while they're a baby, or the doctor does it without telling anybody. And then years down the line when they get puberty, they find out that they may have chosen wrong, and stuff starts growing, and it causes horrific problems. All because you couldn't just wait to figure out. Because once we're out of the body, once we're out of the womb, doesn't mean we stop growing and stop changing. It's just part of the cycle. We all know that. We all grew up. We all went through puberty. We all saw the changes. This shouldn't be shocking to anybody. But for whatever reason it is. There's also Turner syndrome, XO. Some people only have one functioning X, but they don't have a Y. They don't have anything else. They come out and everyone's like, oh, they look female. And it turns out, no, they're not. And they don't develop like a girl. Or like a female should. And this is before we even get to gender and expression and what they should wear and how they act and yada, yada, yada. They may be socialized as a woman, but it turns out they're not. And things end up growing later, as I was talking about. Or you get people that don't have any functional sex glands at all. They might be there, but they don't function. This can cause people great pain. Because they think they're fine. They got all the right parts, everything looks good, and they try to have a baby, and turns out they have a womb that's barren. Their ovaries don't work. Or a man who's shooting blanks. People, oh, how would you say that? That's funny. Or, no, it's not a funny thing. It's just a colloquialism that we use. But it's not a funny thing, especially if you're trying to have children. It's an awful thing. And it's a pain that is hard to understand unless you've gone through it, unless you've had that discussion. Which, by the way, is something that I've been through as well. I used to be married. We've had these talks, and we've done the measurements and all that. And to find out that, no, your body's so messed up, because for whatever reason, you're not producing stuff right, you probably won't be able to ever have a child. Not until we fix some things, and we got to figure out what that is. But that costs too much money. So you just leave it alone. Just set it to the side. Just try to live your life. So it's not just something that's close to me, it's something that's real. This happens. But we like to act like all these aren't. These things aren't happening. But you may say, oh, I'm not talking about these people, I'm talking about trans people. No, when you hurt them, you're also hurting these guys. You're hurting these people. I always try to use guys. I'm trying to be formal, but my informalities keep coming out. But you're also hurting these people with these conditions. And then people be like, well, I don't believe that. Well, what do you mean you don't believe it? You believe that people aren't barren? Well, then I guess you don't believe the Bible, because that's a pretty hot topic in the Bible, is women being barren. There's even laws, Jewish laws about it, about what to do in the case of someone being barren. Do you think that happens just, I don't know, because the woman wants to? No, it's because of something that was wrong. Something didn't form right, one way or the other. One chromosome clicked off this way when it should have went the other way. Something formed this way when it should have went this way. That's just how it works. It's a roll of the dice. Getting pregnant in general is incredibly difficult, even though some of us have stories that would beg to differ. My family's full of those stories, but my family's also full of a story of it being incredibly hard. That when they tried to have a baby, they couldn't. They tried and think, oh, well, I guess we can't have any babies. I guess we just got blessed with one. It's not possible anymore. And all of a sudden, Lord behold, they got pregnant again. Oh, which is great. They wanted it. It just came out of... they wanted the boy. It just came out of very... I would say inconvenient. It wasn't inconvenient, just when they were trying, nothing was happening. And then when they stopped trying, something happened. Because when you actually look at the numbers, getting pregnant is so difficult. The odds are not in your favor. It's a wonder how anyone is ever conceived, let alone born, before you get into statistics about how many people die during childbirth and how many babies die. We're not like rabbits who can just, decide to be pregnant. That's just a whole other thing. Humans are fickle. But then once you get pregnant, keeping the baby is incredibly difficult. And we know this. Why do we act like we don't? We know this. It's a reality. And sometimes things just form weird. And weird or abnormal doesn't mean bad. It just means outside the norm. Now, there are bad things. If you're born without organs that you need, that's a problem. Or holes in things that don't need holes in them. Like a heart or a brain or a lung. That can be bad. That is bad. But just being born outside the norm, that's not a problem. Just might get some weird looks, or might be some interesting conversations because people aren't used to being around it. But other than that, that's not wrong. So why are we treating these people like they're wrong? And if you think you've never met with someone that has had these intersex issues or chromosome issues, and you think, I've never met someone, I've never seen somebody. Do you know what Down syndrome is? Now, while not having anything to do with intersex, it has to do with your chromosomes. It's a genetic condition caused when an unused or unusual cell division results in an extra full or partial copy of chromosome 21. They have an extra chromosome, and it usually results in deformities. We know of Down syndrome. That's real, and it's caused by a similar thing. When the chromosomes are being put together, when the person's being made, something just goes wrong. And that's what happens. Why is it so hard to believe or understand that can happen when it comes to sex? Because of course it can. Why can all these other problems, all these other things happen on these other chromosomes and go every which way? But no, when it comes to the ones that make sex, no, that can't happen. Of course it can. Of course it can happen. And it does happen all the time. And you may even have it and not even realize it. May even know because it's not outwardly physical. Some people go their whole lives and never find out that they may have something extra that they didn't know, or other things, because it might, you didn't have a fully developed this or underdeveloped that. There's people who speak, and on a similar note, there are people who go in and think, they have a tumor. We discovered you might have a tumor, and then no, this isn't a tumor. This is you. This is your underdeveloped twin. That's a thing that happens. When you first formed, there were twins, and then one was stronger than the other, and then you absorbed the other, and then so like people find like these tumors, these growths full of like teeth and stuff like that. It's pretty gross, but it's something that happens. Something that happens a lot. Because we're imperfect. That's just how it's always been. But that's intersex. We have to understand that before you even get into choice, everyone is born different, and people can be born outside of one or the other. And people can be born outside of one or the other and not even realize it. And sometimes when they do find out, it's incredibly painful. Especially if they're trying to have kids. I found out that they can't because their insides don't work. Because they were born abnormal. But not everyone born intersex has any problem with it. That may not cause them any health issues. They may be able to have children just fine and be able to live long, healthy lives and so on and so forth. So why are we demonizing them? Why? Because you're demonizing them or just ignoring them when you're trying to go after transgendered people. And that doesn't make any sense. What does this have to do with Jewish law? We're about to get to that. But I just wanted to make sense that, I just wanted to point out that gender and sex are different, and even just going off sex, not going into gender or choice or any of this other modern stuff that we think is modern but isn't, not everyone is born one or the other. It's a pretty wide spectrum. Now on to the Talmud. Now, the Jewish Talmud was written over a long time, but was kind of compiled and refined probably around 500 CE or AD, depending on which one version you want to use, so about the middle of the 6th century. So it's old. That would make it at least, if it was in 500, that would be 1,500 years old. So it's real old. Now, there's another thing that we understand about Judaism is that it's very strict. It's one of the reasons it's not as popular as the other two Abrahamic religions. The other Abrahamic religions are pretty open. They're not as strict. Christianity, for example, doesn't have a conversion process. And it's supposed to be freeing from all these laws and such. So everybody can just jump in. We all be great. Have fun, be friends, and all that good stuff, except that it's not exactly how that's panned out, but that's the idea. It's more freeing, more open than Judaism. But when we look at Judaism, when we look at the Talmud, even all those years ago, 1,500 years ago, when we didn't know anything, they understood sex and gender very differently. Now, it's still very different than how we understand it today, even in your strictest or conservative view or whatever. Even what you believe in gender, if you just think it's one and one and all that, still completely different. In fact, gender wasn't even really a separate concept at the time. And it mainly had to do with legality. As if someone was a man, they had certain rights that a woman didn't. A woman could do certain things, and a man could do certain things. And then vice versa. Our view of gender even 50 years ago was different of what made a man and what made a woman. Think of the colors. When you think of what's a boy color, people say blue. What's a girl color? People say pink. Do you know that pink started as a boy's color? In fact, it was made for that purpose. George Washington's favorite suit that he used to wear all the time was pink. We still have it, except that since the dyes of the time weren't great, it's faded. It's faded to white, but it was a very almost hot pink. And he had multiple of them, and he wore it all the time. Little boys used to be, when they were toddlers, almost used to be put in these things that looked like dresses. They were gowns. So little boys used to walk around in pink gowns because that was considered what boys wore. That's not how it is now. And that was going even back to the 20s and 30s. That's not the same now. I believe at one point in time, blue was considered a girl's color, but I don't know that one off the top of my head. But the boys' color used to be pink. Now, regardless, no matter what color you wear, that doesn't make you anything. But there are some people who really hold to that. Certain colors for certain people. Sometimes men wearing pink shirts. It's like, oh, how could you do that? You're not a real man for wearing a pink shirt. Which is just stupidity. Laughably. It's laughably stupid. Wear whatever you want. It's a shirt. That doesn't mean anything. But those colors did kind of fall to one or the other. But what we think of now is not the same. High heels were for men originally. So was makeup and wigs and tight stockings. A lot of the things, men also used to wear corsets all the time. Now, you can wear those right now and I don't care. Doesn't make you any less of whatever you are. But if we think of what traditionally seen as men's clothing, that isn't it. But just 100 years ago, and then going back even farther, that was different. Going back into the 500 CE or going back into Jesus' time, I honestly don't know what the difference between men and women's clothing would have been because they both were wearing long flowing robes. So I don't know what. I'm not sure what the difference would have been. And they all wore the similar clothing because it was hot because they lived in the desert. But that's all to say that this is old and they had different views. But we think the older that you get, the stricter it gets. It's not as open, not as open-minded. And we know that, if it's the old Jewish law, that's going to be so strict and it's going to be this and that and it's going to be more akin to my personal beliefs and more conservative and all that. And then you find out that the Jewish Talmud recognizes 8 total genders. It's easier to call them genders, but they're not really genders. They're kind of somewhere in between gender and sex. And they're based on the characteristics of the person. 8. That's a lot more than 2. It's definitely a lot more than 3. And they all have names. They even have symbols. So your first one, and I'm probably going to butcher a lot of these words, but you have Sakar, which is males, and then Nakava, or Nakeva, which is female. Okay. Beyond that, you got 6 more. So androgynous, or androgynos. I believe that's where we also get our word for androgynous. We all know what that is, having both male and female characteristics. Doesn't really go on to what that means. Tumtum, or tumtum, depending on how that's pronounced, is lacking sexual characteristics of any kind. Interesting. Then, I'm going to butcher this. Alonet Hama, which is female at birth, but later developed male characteristics. So someone that they thought was a girl at birth, but then later, on their own, naturally developed male characteristics. So not everything was formed. Then you have Alonet or Elanit Adam, or Adam, female at birth, but later given male characteristics through human interaction. Well, that's interesting, because that's very specific. That's not someone that just grew up and, turns out y'all were wrong and now I've grown all these things. That's someone that was made. A choice was made, and human interaction made them that. The Ceres Hama, male at birth but later naturally developed female characteristics. Ceres Adam, male at birth but later given female characteristics through human intervention. And then eunuchs also go in there somewhere. It kind of depends. That one, they kind of float around. Sometimes they're included in one of those different genders, and then sometimes they're off on their own. As a eunuch being someone that was castrated, which is a horrible practice, because they didn't do it of their own free will or because they wanted. It was kids that were castrated against their will for weird purposes. It is a weird thing that has gone, that's been a thing of multiple cultures around the world for some reason. Now, if you're grown and you want to castrate yourself and all that, whatever, you want to spend the money and go do it, that's up to you. I'm not saying someone that has been castrated is evil or wrong. I'm saying doing that to someone against their will is was evil and wrong, especially to a child against their will, and that's what the purpose was. Eunuchs were not done when they were grown. So that one, that could technically be your ninth one, but sometimes they would put them in these other ones. But most of these, it is usually character, when it talks about the ones through human intervention, these are ones that are usually done of the consent of the person, usually not forced into this. And these were important because they needed to know who these people were so they could make it in their law, because Judaism is very legalistic, and depending on where you were on that spectrum, you could only do certain things. Especially at the time when women were seen more as property than people, which is also barbaric and awful. But you would think that at a time when they saw women like that, they would be very close-minded in a lot of other ways, and they weren't, because they saw the world around them and accepted it. And they're like, well, we got these people, so we got to figure out a name. Okay, so then we'll figure out names, and we'll figure out where to put them in law. They didn't banish them or hurt them. They didn't hate them. They gave them names, figured out what to do, and then told them what they could and couldn't do. Because at a time, women couldn't enter like the temples and such. Which I think is kind of insane, considering this was 1,500 years ago. And it's something that we have a problem doing even today. We have a problem just accepting people within the norm, let alone outside the norm in any way. Because for whatever reason, we like to hate. We like to be angry. And I don't know why. I don't know why it's so easy to do that. But many people do. Because I guess it's hard to love. I guess it's hard to admit that you were wrong. Something that you were told, that you were believed was wrong. And I can understand that. But it doesn't mean that you're any less wrong. You can just admit that you're wrong. It's not that hard. I've said lots of things that weren't right. And I would go look them up, found out I was wrong, and then you know what I did? Instead of fighting against it, I went, oh, I was wrong. If it came up again, but yeah, I was wrong. I looked that up. Turns out I was wrong. I got that misconstrued with something else. Because that's how that works. You're not going to be right 100% of the time, and it's okay. You can also grow as a person. You can expand your mind, and that's a good thing. God wants us to do that. I don't know why people think he doesn't. You're supposed to grow as a person. But the one thing he doesn't want us to do is grow as a hateful person. He wants us to grow our love and our heart and our compassion. But going back, people who developed male or female characteristics later when they thought to be one or the other before, that definitely seems like intersex people. But the ones that were changed by human intervention, that's someone who's transitioned. And these people were considered okay and had a spot within old Jewish law. So why don't we accept them now? If the really, really strict guys, the ones following the old wrathful God, like we like to say. Everybody likes to say, well, God got real nice in the New Testament. We live in the time of grace now. Well, they're still worshiping the old one. The vengeance guy. The guy that would just get angry and kill people. Apparently he's okay with this. Now, it's the same God. I'm not trying to say they worship a different God, but they think he's different. We view him differently. Even though they also believe in being very compassionate and loving, because they also understand a lot of that, him being really aggressive and mean and such, was not him actually being that way, but it was written by people who wanted a vengeance story because they were being oppressed, and they wanted their God to be vengeful. But every time when God truly reveals himself, he's compassionate, he's loving. And then when he sent his son to us, what did he tell us? To be compassionate and loving, to love one another, to help one another, to raise each other up, to build each other up. Those are his commandments. And they're simple. He simplified the commandments. Everything can be summed up in this: love thy neighbor. He simplified it to make it easier for us, and then sacrificed himself to make it even easier. So why do you have such a hard time following that? He commands you to accept them. He commands you to love them. And you choose not to. Why? Why is it so hard to love these people? Why are you so hateful to those that you don't understand? Is it because it's easier to hate what you don't understand than to just accept them? Easier to hate than to try to understand them? Is it really easier to hate than to actually follow the commands of Christ? Because if so, then let that be known and stop claiming to follow Christ. You can do that. It's a free world, it's a free country. At least then you'll be honest with yourself. But right now you have people that call themselves degenerates, that call themselves against God, anti-theists and stuff like that, and they're spreading love, and they're building houses, and they're feeding the poor, and they're accepting all these people, and they're doing all the things Jesus said to do. And they don't like Jesus. At best, they don't believe in him. At worst, they preach out against him and preach out against God. And yet you, who claim to believe in him and claim to worship him and do all that, are doing everything he said not to do. If you really believe we're going to have a white throne judgment at the end of this, who do you think he's going to choose? You think he's going to be like, all right, y'all, I know y'all guys didn't do anything that I said. You actively hurt the people I told you not to. You actively disobeyed me. You actively spread hate instead of love. But since you said you were Christian, you're okay. Now these people who actually did everything I said, nah, they're gone. And if you believe in what the scripture says about that, you actually know that the opposite is going to happen. He's going to choose those people. And then you're going to cry out. He says, I do not know you. I do not know you. And you'll ask how. I said, because you did not help me when I needed it. You were not there when I was there before you. And he goes, when did you come? When did you come before us? We would have helped you with this. And he goes, I was the sick, I was the hungry, I was the poor, I was the imprisoned, you didn't visit me. I was all of these things and you shunned me and turned away and you hated me. So you did not know me. At the very least, stop. If you're not going to actually follow the love and be loving, then stop pretending to know him. But child mutilation, you might cry. We have to protect the children. All about the children. Children, children, children. Except you don't actually care about the children. There's so much I could say about this hypocrisy. And how many people who always say this but never actually do anything to help the children. But I'm going to stick to 2 points. 1, virtually no one, and I mean no one, is doing major life-changing surgeries, especially cosmetic ones, on children. And there's a very simple reason why. Because even for needed surgery, life-saving surgery, doctors are reluctant to do certain things to children without going through every other option. Why? It's because children are still growing. You can't do the same things on a kid that you can on a full-grown, done adult. Especially anything that involves bones. Oh yeah, we'll just staple this thing together. Oh, your arm kept growing and then those pins pulled apart and now you're in terrible pain? Oh yeah, well, turns out that's what's going to happen. Now, they still do the surgeries. They still save kids. I'm not saying they're not going to save your children if they have a life-threatening injury. What I'm saying is they're going to be a little bit reluctant and they're going to have to go about it a different way. Because they're still growing. Now, once they get to a part where they stop, or most of it stopped, it gets easier. I had a friend in school when we were kids, and they got a horrible staph infection. It almost killed him. It was in their knee. He had to get all these surgeries and everything, and it was scary. He was gone for like a year, but we kept hearing back. One of the things we heard back is had to do all these different things, had to try other stuff. They had to try weird surgeries, and one of the things they told them is like, they were like, hey, we can do this, but Just need to let you know. We might want to try other things, because if we do this, it might stump your growth. At the very least, the rest of your body will grow, but this leg won't. He was a pretty little guy at the time. Then he had a growth spurt later. I think he's much taller than me now. And they were like, well, you got to do what you got to do, and they figured some stuff out. And then it turns out you can't really tell the legs are that different. I think he has a slight limp now. He's fine. And he didn't get shortened. He didn't get shortened at all or any of that. But that was a genuine concern, because if you do that wrong, yeah, you might save his life, but you could cause further pain and suffering later if you do it the wrong way. I mean, the least of the issues was, hey, this might stump your growth. The worst problem is if we do something wrong, do something in the wrong way, and your leg grows, but the metal that we put inside doesn't grow, it's going to pull apart, and it's going to be awful. But that didn't happen. It's great. Everything was fine. It was real scary. That was a scary year. That's just an example on surgeries on a kid. Even ones that everyone agrees on, you can't do it the same way, and you have to take a lot of precautions because the body is still growing. So there is no doctor that is going to do life-changing cosmetic surgery on a child. They'll give puberty blockers and medication and all kinds of other stuff. And one of the reasons for the puberty blockers is because the puberty can change the body in certain ways that are, I wouldn't say irreversible, because they can be reversible, but through lots of money and surgery. But they do that because everyone goes, well, even if I do accept this, whatever, whatever, and that people can do this, what if they change their mind, right? And that's understandable. One, you have to go through a bunch of hoops to get anything done. And all kinds of like psychiatric evals and all kinds of stuff. But beyond that, they don't do that, anything cosmetic, because they can change their mind. That and anything cosmetic, especially with skin, remember, because your body's still growing, and that can cause issues. So they go, okay, we're going to give you this stuff that's going to stop you, and then once your brain's fully formed and whatever, and once you're 18 and whatever, you can decide then if maybe this was a weird phase, maybe you had something else going on or whatever, and then you can decide. And then that's when they do that. Otherwise, everything else is fine. They're not just wheeling kids into surgery. People can't afford to go to the doctor for simple things. You really think that this is happening on a countrywide scale? Where have you been? I can't afford to get my tooth looked at because I can't. People can't afford several $100 emergencies. You really think people are going and doing surgeries that cost tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, depending on what all they're getting done? That's not happening. That's just not happening. So we have to understand that if you believe that or have heard that, you have to understand that's nonsense. It's people getting worked up over nothing. It's because they want a reason to hate people, because they don't have any. But whether or not you agree with these people or think anything else, you have to understand that that is something that isn't happening. Now, the second point about child mutilation. You say you're against it. Then I'll agree with you. That's something. I just talked about eunuchs and how something being done against someone's consent, especially like castration, is awful. It's a very valid point, and it's a good belief to have. Are you circumcised? Are your children circumcised? Do you plan to circumcise your future children? Because that is genital mutilation, quite literally. And it's done without anyone's consent. You're not asking that baby's consent. And if done wrong and botched, it can cause horrific, life-altering problems. And it being botched isn't as rare as you would hope. There's also infections that can happen and trauma that can happen. Probably didn't think about that, did you? Well, isn't that something that we need? Not really. In terms of Christianity, we're not even really commanded to do it. That was a debate in the New Testament, with Paul finally coming down on the side that Gentiles don't need to do it. So if you're a Gentile, they don't need to do it. Then the real debate was, do Jews need to continue to do it? if they become Christians. Because they believe that covenant was over. But other than that, isn't there like a medical reason? There can be. In terms of overall medical reason to get it, not really. There's as much evidence for as there is against it. There's a big movement against circumcision in general, at very least infant circumcision. But there are medical conditions where it is necessary. Believe it or not. Now, we don't know why they did it back in the ancient days, why they would do something that was pretty risky. I mean, there's what Exodus, it talks about it being cut off with a sharp rock. That's not fun. And they were doing that to sometimes grown men. And that's not good for multiple reasons, and one of them being, I don't know, infection. You got an infection back then, you were dead. Especially an infection there. That was not good. They were risking it all. But you can still get those infections even in a sterile environment, or an environment that's supposed to be sterile, because someone doesn't know what they're doing or someone doesn't care, so on and so forth. But there's actual reasons to do it, and it may not be an apparent when they're a baby. It also shouldn't be something that's done when someone's a kid. They should have that consent as well. They should be able to consent. They should be able to. And when they're an adult, they may want to get it. And a lot of times it's a lot easier when they're an adult. But you didn't know that they don't give babies anesthesia when they do that, or pain relievers, most of the time. When you actually think about the practice, it's kind of awful. And it could be done a lot better. It's just they do it in a way in which they don't care, and that is literal genital mutilation. But most people seem to be okay with that for some reason. So you're not actually against genital mutilation if you're for that. But even on that one, there are reasons to actually get it done. There are, and even back then I think it came out of infection worries. Because yes, you are risking infection by cutting that and then being in the desert. But if you weren't the cleanliest person in the world and you didn't bathe all the time, and there's a lot of bathing rules in Jewish law and in the Torah, and it's because they didn't really have them before. It's one of the reasons that when the Black Plague happened, much later in Europe, everybody was affected except for the Jewish community because they had bathing rituals while everybody else wasn't bathing at all. Well, so a lot of the Torah has to deal with cleanliness on a literal, physical, clean level. And that could have been one because, well, if there's skin over that particular area and there's stuff inside it and it gets infected, that's not great. And I know that's not a good image. But we're talking about real things. Another thing is a condition that if something goes wrong, the skin is too tight and it can't reveal anything. It can't be pulled back. It can't reveal the glands. And that can cause lots of problems. It can cause pain, suffering. It can cause the cutoff of blood flow. And it can cause, among other things, someone not being able to have sex, procreate, and have children because they can't engage in the act without causing harm to themselves. And if it's tied too tight and it cuts off the blood flow, that particular area is got lots of blood flow there, and if you cut that off, there's so much going through there that it can kill you. It's not just sensitive because it's sensitive. It's like that's a kill spot. That's a kill shot. Believe it or not, it's not just your head. That's your head and your heart. That's also an area because it's where a lot of your arteries and stuff are. So there aren't actual medical reasons to get it, but that's on a case-by-case basis. And there, that wouldn't be mutilation. That wouldn't be senseless mutilation. But if you're just doing it just to do it, especially if you're just making some random guy do it with a scalpel or a knife, and they're not even using any anesthesia or pain relief on a baby, that's awful. But that is forced genital mutilation. So if you do that, you don't actually care about any of this. You're just looking for reasons to hate a community of which you don't understand. To which then I ask, why do you hate this community that you understand? Why do you refuse to understand them? You don't have to hang out with them every day. You ain't got to become their best friend. But there's really no reason to hate them. There's no reason to go out of your way to hate them. None. It's not like they're a terrorist organization. We're talking about a group of people. Of a type of people. We're not talking about the Taliban. Like, why? They've done nothing to you. They're doing nothing to you. They're just trying to live their lives. Well, they're against God. Where does it say that? Where does it say that? I have more evidence that you're against God if you have these beliefs than any transgender person. Or any gay person for that matter. So why are you hateful when that is explicitly taught, you're told not to do? And all the Gospels, they're all the different changes. They're all the different points of views and opinions. You're not supposed to be hateful. You're not supposed to judge either. And in fact, if you do judge, you're going to be judged harshly. The person that doesn't judge will not be judged harshly by the Lord, but you will be judged twice as hard, twice as much as you judge. You're going to be held to the same standards and more that you hold other people. So if you're hateful to God's children, how do you think He's going to treat you? You could lead by example. You could help them. You could feed them, give them money and love them and show them love. And if God truly wants them to be something different than what they are, then He will speak to them and change them. And they will become different. But they won't do it through hate. The only time violence or aggression needs to be used is when resisting hate. When it's resisting the intolerant. When it's in resisting evil and violence and death. But these people are none of those things. So offer them nothing but compassion and love. Because according to Jesus, if you believe that they are not with Jesus, if you believe they're not with Christ, that somehow these people are against God, then what are we commanded to do? We're commanded to love them, lead by example, help them, and then God will take over. We're just here to maintain everything. He does the work. Well, we do all the work, but He does the work of changing someone's heart. We can't convert anybody. We can't change anybody, and we're told not to do that. God does that. God goes to people individually. So if you believe that's what they need and that's what needs to happen, then you need to do what God told you to do. Now, for any trans people listening, I want you to know that I don't believe that you're against God, because you aren't. You are one of God's children. You are loved. Whether you believe in Him or not, that's okay. If you don't believe in Him, I'm not sure why you're listening to this. But just know that you are loved. I love you. He loves you. You are a good person. You are not broken. For any judgment, you are judged by the fruit of your spirit, and that's based on your actions. So if you're a hateful trans person, you're going to be judged because you're hateful, not because you're trans. No one cares about that. There's a lot of things in the Old Testament, and even the New, that we thought God cared about. Turns out He didn't. A lot of things that just was people. And then, if we want to talk about, what about all these laws? What about this? What about that? In both Old and New Testament. Let me read you a scripture. Because people will say, well, God wouldn't put them there if He didn't want us to follow Him. God wouldn't have done this. God wouldn't do this if it wasn't right. Ezekiel 20, chapter 21 through 26. It explains how God gave us laws that He knew were wrong on purpose. laws that we couldn't live up to or follow, so that we would forever be unclean in order to punish us. Now, actually, it doesn't say us, it says about the Israelites specifically, children of Israel. So even in those original laws, he gave ones that he knew were wrong. He gave ones that he didn't even want to be followed, ones that couldn't be followed. He gave contradictory laws. The following law, one law would would go against the other, and he did all this on purpose to cause conflict because they rebelled against him. So when you want to look at all these things and go, oh, but it says this here, it says this, this is why I have to be hateful, because even though you're commanded not to be hateful in the New Testament, you keep going back to the old, keep going back to this and that, show you why you need to hate trans people, and then for that matter gay people, and so on and so forth. Because these laws, this law and this law, well, even God said that he gave contradictory laws and gave laws that were wrong. He gave laws that were wrong. He gave laws that he knew were wrong, knew that we couldn't follow. If we pay close attention to verses 25 and 26, it says, moreover, I gave them statutes that were not good, and ordinances by which they could not live. I defiled them through their very gifts, and their offering of up all their firstborn, in order that I might horrify them, so that they might know that I am the Lord. It's pretty hardcore. But he said that all of his laws aren't just and aren't good, and that he did it on purpose. But he didn't say which ones. So with these final two things, I will leave. I'll leave us all to think about. That if you still don't know what to think about the trans community, or any community, and you still don't know if you should hate them, one, you should know that you shouldn't. But if you're still having some sort of conflict, some sort of weird conviction. And with any conviction, not everything is convicted by God. People forget there's that devil there. You think he's not trying to throw you some mixed signals here? But sometimes it can be hard to know who is who. I mean, if it wasn't, then everything would be okay and we wouldn't have any problems. But the devil's really good at what he does. Then I ask you this. Pray about it. Pray about it. Ask to be revealed. Ask his opinion. Ask the Lord to talk to you. The Holy Ghost to speak to you. Ask them. Because I guarantee you haven't. I guarantee all these hateful feelings you have, the only times you ever talk to God about it is when you're just talking bad about these people. You haven't actually asked him, hey, is what I'm doing right? Is what I believe right? Am I hating these people for a reason? Is that what you want of me? You should already know the answer to that. But if you don't, and this is for anything, pray about it. And you're not just going to get it after one answer, and you have to be genuine. Because there were people who thought the same things you did about black people. People who still do, by the way. Some of your grandparents may have been the very ones that were standing in the way of the door to the schools, preventing any black children from getting in. Segregation was not that long ago. Those people were still around, and they raised us. And they had those thoughts. Some of my own family members, I was told, didn't believe black people had souls. And because of that belief, they could freely hate them because they saw them as subhuman. They could treat them however they want because they weren't actually people. And we know that is wrong. We know that is evil. We know that is against God. But people believe that. And I bet you have similar thoughts about this particular group. So instead of just either sticking to your guns or just not knowing what to do, go to the Lord. We have this prayer thing that we like to forget about. Ask Him. Ask Him. Talk to Him. And be ready to receive. And by the way, this might also be him talking to you. Because that's kind of how it works. But ask him. Pray about it. Talk to him. See what he actually wants you to do, and you might be surprised. And on the topic of conviction, the reason you can't really preach it is everyone gets convicted of different things. And conviction, there can be broad conviction, of course, of things that we know are evil. But there are people who can preach conviction to be like, oh, you can't watch CSI. You can't watch, I don't know, the Deal or No Deal or whatever, some weird game show, because that's against God somehow. I don't know where you're getting that from, but okay. And I've heard lots of weird teachings, people who believe that. And they're like, well, I was convicted of that, so that means it's against God. No. There's also personal conviction, and God might convict you of something. The Holy Ghost may lay that on your heart and convict you of something on a personal level, because it's personal, not because it has it's not supposed to go beyond that. And well, why would God convict me of a TV show if it wasn't bad? Well, it is bad for you. Maybe God is talking to you, saying, stop doing that because you're addicted to that. That's all you think about. You're watching that over everything else. You're just binge watching it, forgetting about your family and your responsibilities and everything else. You're doing this and that. Every whole life's just about this show. And he's telling you need to stop doing that. And the only way to get away from it is for you to never watch it again. Because that's for you. But not everybody who watches TV or watches a TV show is doing that. They just want to watch some TV. So what you need to not do is go out and tell everybody that God thinks TV is evil. That's not how that works. But that's how a lot of people preach. That's what a lot of people do, but you can't preach that. So if you're convicted about something, know that there's personal conviction as well. I thought I would just slip that in there, just to, 'cause people might have some questions. But pray about it and see what he convicts you of, because he might, when you actually talk to him and open yourself up to his word, he might convict you, and you might get a deep guilt. You might feel real bad about the things that you've believed and what you've held in your heart. And know to not let that crush you, because the devil will use that to crush you. And he may even use it to try and heighten your hate. What you need to understand is go, okay, I did wrong. I was ignorant of this, and now I'm not. So now I can go forth and be better. And that's very hard for some people to do. But I'll tell you this, it's freeing. And know that you won't get everything right. You're going to make mistakes and all kinds of stuff. And some are going to be little and some are going to be big. But when you do it, you make the mistake, then you pick yourself up and you go on and you go, I did wrong and I want to do better. And the Lord will pick you up and go, okay, let's go. Let's get better. And then the last thing is this. It's 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, and it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. It always protects us, always trusts, always hopes, always preserves. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. And where there is knowledge, it will pass away. So thank you for listening, everybody. God bless y'all. I hope y'all have a great day, a great week, a great month, a great year, and a great rest of your life. And may God bless every single moment of it. We will see y'all in the next one.